excited people from the public here today. So that's okay. So, yeah, it's past 3, so why don't we go ahead and get started. So, my name's Brandon Richards. I'm the hearing officer, so I'm the person that Hooper City appointed to basically hear any requests for variances. And so, usually, these are pretty informal, but I'll go over the process. Basically, I'll kind of walk through what we look for when we analyze a variance here in a second. And then what I'll do is let you, speak to your application however you would like. I've read through it and have a general idea, but there may be things that you want to point out. Whatever you want to do is you're welcome to spend as much time as you like speaking to the issue. One or both of you, whatever you'd like to do. After that, I typically would open it up for anybody that had shown up if there was somebody here. And so if somebody does wander in, I'll ask if anybody wants to speak to it. From there, if I have a question or if any of the city staff here has a question, we'll ask you and try to just ferret out any unknowns. From there, we'll wrap it up today, and then I always just take these under advisement for a week or two, maybe a couple of weeks by the time I can kind of go through it. I like to take my time to go through the application and then add to that anything that you've added today, and then within a couple of weeks what I do is issue a written decision, and then that kind of spells out what the determination is. And so that's how we do it as far as the process today. A little bit of background on variances. I'll just kind of go over this quickly, but just so it's kind of on the record for today and just for your information. A variance is governed by our city ordinances, but we as a city are governed by the Utah State Code that talks about variances. And so that state code, it kind of tracks along with the application that you filled out. You have to kind of identify what is the issue, what is this unreasonable hardship that you feel like you're experiencing if we enforce strictly the ordinance. And then one of the things that always is important with variances is the state code mentions pretty clearly that this unreasonable hardship that you speak about, for a city to be able to give a variance, you have to make sure that unreasonable hardship is not either self-imposed or purely economic in nature. Those are the two things that comes from the state code, where they put a limit on the ability that a city has to issue a variance. So, for example, if it's entirely economically based, the hardship you're talking about, or entirely something that was imposed by yourself, the state says, well, you can't give a variance for that. There may be other options, but not a variance. And so those are oftentimes things that kind of hamper the ability to issue an ordinance, a variance. And so I like to always bring those up because I always want the applicant to speak to those 2 points. And so I may ask you questions about that if you don't cover it already when you speak to it, because those are the things that, as we look back at variances that come through, those are the kinds of things that kind of make it hard to issue one. So with that opening and kind of going through what we're going to do, if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'll let you just kind of speak to it. You can come on up and sit down right here. We're just going to record it through this device, so we just want to make sure we pick it all up. And
I thought we were going to make me use the
mic.
No,
it's probably easier to pick it up right here. So we're not that formal. So maybe just introduce yourself and speak to whatever you would like as to what you're looking for.
So I'm Bryce Mindrum. This is my wife, Tammy. We've lived in Hooper since 2016. We've been in this house. We contracted with Tough Shed to build a shed in our backyard. Okay. They went and pulled a permit from Hooper City, and that permit that they pulled from Hooper City said that there was 5 feet from the shed to the south fence. Okay. When they came to install the shed, I had a discussion with the installers about it, and the installer said, no, it's 3 feet. And I says, well, okay, that's great.
Okay.
Because we were at that point, he was 4.5 feet away from the fence, and so I wasn't no longer worried about it, right? So they built the shed, and they get to the end, and then they went and put these anchors on, and I was like, well, I don't want the anchors, and they're like, no, you have to have the anchors. It's part of the permit. You're required to have them.
What's the anchor do?
I don't have any idea, but it was a requirement of Hooper City. And
Okay.
it's an anchor that goes down into the ground that holds the shed from moving, right?
It's holds it in place.
Yeah. And so I think it's funny that they were so adamant about doing it, because ultimately we did all the anchors. You know, we did 6 anchors. They're on the outside of the shed.
Okay.
And I just think it's funny that they were so adamant about that. On the other side, they were so not compliant is the right way for me to say that, with the thing that really kind of mattered, right?
Okay.
You asked me to speak about economic hardship and
yeah, so I have a couple of questions before you get to that. So help me understand a little bit. I understand just from the information that you provided and what we're looking up on the screen a little bit on where it was placed. And then they anchored it in. And so speak a little bit more maybe to the issue that you're concerned about with just moving it. So let's call it 4.5 feet. So you have to move it 6 inches or whatever. What's the issue?
So the issue is the size of the shed, and they would basically have to rebuild the shed in order to move it. Okay. The 10 inches that would make it back into compliance. And from my perspective, so you asked about the economic thing, I mean, from a cost perspective, I'm not worried about that as much, right? What I'm worried about is the product that I'm ultimately going to get from Tough Shed, right? Because if they come in with a crane or some forklifts or whatever they would have to do, and they'd have to cut all of those anchors and move it by that amount of space, I have great concerns about whether or not it would be level, right? And even more, whether or not it would be structurally sound at that point, because you're moving a fairly large building and kind of shimmying it over. So those are now. I also so Tough Shed, of course, they try to play middle of the road, right? They're not going out of their way to claim responsibility, right? And so I would guess that, from my seat, I contracted you to do this. You pulled the permit. You put it in the wrong place. I think from my seat, I can have a pretty good argument that you guys should have to move this.
Right.
I believe that I will have to make that argument with them.
Have you spoken to them about the placement being wrong?
What do they say about
They're
very well aware. In fact, they kicked off the process. They're the ones that called Malcolm first, actually.
Okay.
Because they were like, oh, yeah, we screwed this up. We'll call and we'll get it taken care of. And then came to find out it was actually us that needs to file the stuff.
Variance,
and so that's when I really got involved. I had talked to Malcolm early on, and just kind of got some of the lay of the process and stuff like that. But then I left it in Tough Shed's hands, and Caitlin was kind of dealing with it. And then they came back to me and said, "Hey, we need you to file the actual variance packet." So I put together the packet, filed the packet. I paid the expense there at my cost, right?
Okay.
Now I still owe them $800. I intend to take that cost out of the $800 that I owe them, but so that's kind of where I am.
Okay, and then I'll ask you this, just a couple questions, just because I ask everybody, just so that we get it on the record, kind of what the response is. So the one is that the issue is, you kind of spoke to this a little bit, is that we can't grant a variance for something that's an economic issue, an economic hardship, meaning the problem complained of or you're experiencing can be resolved by way of money, so you can fix it. So like I've had somewhere, people wanting to put a swimming pool in one spot versus the other, or other issues with accessory buildings, and it's just the placement, and it's a cost, and so they don't want to pay the cost to move it, but a cost could resolve the issue. And so then I guess just kind of back to that, if you could speak a little bit more to that, like if money wasn't an object or concern in any way, would it solve this?
Would it solve it in a way that I get a product that is acceptable? Probably not. I think at this point, if they move the building, what I'm going to get is going to be a diminished product. And so I don't think that money would solve this. Now, with that said, you and I both know that we could take a wrecking ball to the whole building,
Take it to the extreme, you can
and
knock
build
the
the
thing
whole,
down,
build a whole another one up, and that would solve the problem. So when you say money is no object, certainly there is a possibility that gets done. I don't think that that's the solution that Tough Shed would take, and I think that they would fight me legally on.
What do you think? Not that you can speak for them, but I mean, what do you think they would do? Should you tell them, look, that you got to move it?
So I've already got a little bit cross with them, and told them that they tried to finalize my project and my building. I told them you're not going to finalize it until either Hooper City grants a variance or you place me a building to my specifications and my acceptance in the proper spot. Now, that's my words speaking to them. That's not them speaking to me, right? And certainly they're not, like I told you, they're not bending over backwards to take responsibility for anything. I believe that if you rule not in my favor, I believe that I'll be in for a legal fight with them.
Okay.
In order to move it.
And the second question is similar in nature a little bit to the first, but we're told by the state that we can't issue a variance for something that's self-imposed. Now I realize you didn't go out and put the shed up. I understand that, but you,
ultimately,
in the more general sense of
ultimately, I'm the owner.
You're the owner of the property, and so just speak to that point. I'm not trying to lock you into any weird position.
I
just
understand.
So that you speak to it.
I understand what you're asking, and I was going to address that.
Okay.
Ultimately, I'm the owner. I should be responsible, and I should have been the one that maybe looked at the permit or something like that. I didn't even consider any of that.
Well, and I'm not even trying to place blame on you. I define it more as like they are a part of you, right? Like, so they did. I know they did it, but I'm not trying to say you should go out and
I actually don't think that Tough Shed made the mistake here either, right? So Tough Shed got the variance. They got the permit. The permit was correct. It had the specifications on it correct.
The
installer came and didn't follow the specifications of the permit. And so, I think there's certainly a place where fault is, and maybe that's what Tough Shed would do. Maybe they would go back and say, we're not paying for this. The installers that we hired are going to have to pay for this, and and I'm not sure how that would end up either. That might be quite a fight too.
Okay. Well, I think I explained it very well. I think I understand, everything that happened as far as this goes. Anything else you want to add to it as far as, and of course I have the application that I'll go over a little bit more as well.
No, I don't think I think the only thing I would add is, so I don't know if you got an email from my neighbor, but
I'm not sure if one came in or not.
So
maybe we can check.
The neighbor to the south that is next to the fence, so Casey Wood, he said that he was going to send it, not the Tigers, the next one down.
4874.
Yeah, that one.
Okay.
He said he was going to send an email and just, his solution to this was, let's just move the fence.
Move your fence line. Yeah. Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because sometimes I will say, and I can't give you any legal advice or anything, but I will say sometimes when variances aren't possible, you look for alternatives. But
that was
like a lot line adjustment.
But clearly that's a joke, because it's a vinyl fence. I mean, it would cost us.
I understand. It costs a lot more.
It might cost more than the shed to move the fence, but it was a joke that he made because he, I don't believe that he has issue with,
No, I understand. Yeah, it's unlikely that he does, and clearly nobody that received the letter about today has an issue because there's nobody here.
Yeah, we were contacted from a couple of the people that received the letter,
So certainly anything that would be relevant in my determination would not include any negative comments or anything from neighbors, because there haven't been any. So it would not, it would not hinge on that, and I'll take you at your word that your neighbors don't have an issue with it, because they haven't said that they do. So it wouldn't have any, that wouldn't have any negative impact on me at all as far as comments being made or anything. So.
And then the only other thing I'd say, I don't know if you want to see the shed itself.
Sure, if you want to show me a photo.
So I should have brought my cord so I could attach this. But you can actually take it and swipe through. There's 4 or 5 pictures in there.
I can see the anchors that you're talking about. Essentially, just
Well,
hook to the building and then go.
And it's funny, the inspector, when he came out, he says, "Why didn't they anchor it from the inside? That doesn't make any sense." And he says, "These anchors are fine. They passed the inspection, but they should have done it this way."
On the inside.
Okay.
I was frustrated by that, obviously.
Well, I can sense, I mean, and don't get me wrong, I can sense the frustration, because as I'm looking at the photos, I can see that obviously there's plenty of space to have moved it
For sure.
6 inches.
For sure. Yeah,
Don't
that's
get me wrong, and whatever I do, it's not going to be for lack of sympathy for your situation, because I can definitely see what you're saying. So, okay, well, anything that either one, anything
Anything you want to add, Tam?
No.
Okay. All right. And I would ask anyone in the public. There's nobody here, so that's fine. Well, I do want to thank you for putting your packet together very well and then presenting very well today. Like I said at the start, what I'll do is take a week or two, kind of think it through, read through the packet again, take some notes from today, and then I'll give you a written decision.
Okay, so from the timing of that written decision, so Tough Shed has asked that I get back to them and tell them what happened out of this.
Yeah,
they're,
so you
they're
could
pushing pretty hard for me to close this whole thing out, and so I want to be able to give them a realistic time frame.
Yeah, I would tell you less than 2 weeks. I mean, but I don't want to commit.
Okay. And then, is that something that you're going to mail me? Do I come
We'll
here?
send it to you anywhere you like. A lot of times we email them to you.
I say last time you emailed it to us here in house, and then we dispersed them. So
Yeah. So what I'll do is email it to them, and it'll take me 2 weeks or less. It won't be longer than 2 weeks. I just don't want to commit to less than that.
No, that's fine.
And then
That's
can't
fine. I
meet
just
the
want to
deadline,
give
but
them.
You could tell them.
Yeah, I just want to give them a realistic expectation. Right?
Yeah.
I don't want to tell them, hey, they're gonna.
No, for sure you could tell them no more than 2 weeks from today there'll be something decided on it, and then you'll know, and then you can let them know. And above anything, I wish you good luck with them, because I know it's not your fault. You didn't. When you pay somebody to do something, you're not responsible ultimately, but double check their work.
Well, I will tell you that if I had this to do over again, I would have been out in the yard kicking that thing over to the side a little bit.
Well,
but
hindsight being what it is,
here,
but you don't know.
Here I am.
Yeah. Well, I do appreciate you coming in and asking, and like I said, being as prepared as you were, so I appreciate that. So,
all right.
with that, we'll conclude our variance hearing today. So, thank you.
Easy peasy. Thank you.